give you ample time, but the hour being 6:03 PM on June 10th, 2024. I'd like to open the City of Laconia City Council budget meeting. Prior to beginning this, I'd like you all to join me on the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're joined this evening by our recording secretary, Katie Gargano. I'd ask her to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney.
Here.
Counselor Susie.
Here.
Counselor Hoffman.
Present.
Counselor Haynes.
Here.
Counselor Bogart.
Here.
Counselor Felch.
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
I am present as well. We are also joined at council table by Kirk Biotti, our city manager, Glenn Smith, our finance director. This evening we have budget presentations. The first one would be a department budget presentation from the finance department. Glenn Smith, I'd call on you to lead us through the discussion and walk us through your handout.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate the chance to go over the FY25 Finance Department budget with you this evening. We'll start out with just kind of an overview of the department. We have 13 different,
Mayor, if I may.
excuse me?
Do you have it on the screen?
I thought it was on the screen when I checked it an hour ago.
Into some nice blue fancy.
Is it on your screen?
It's, I can see it bright and clear.
Lynn, what page?
You're looking to load the deck?
Nope, the deck is on this.
Council, he'll be in multiple pages. Is it? Not sure which one he's starting off on.
So,
Yeah, you broke it.
Did you lock your office?
Yeah. Can you get in?
One thing I said I didn't want to forget.
turn this off and turn it back on again. The old Bill Gates solution.
Thank you very much.
Shows the computers.
Don't know if anything changed. I checked it right after the HRC was over. I came in, loaded it on, there's only three there. So further on, I'm going to get to the point where how much we rely on our two IT employees.
Would the technology
Oh.
bond cover?
Tell you what, let's again do the Bill Gates solution. I'll unplug this, plug it back in again. Okay.
You're hired. Priorities.
Let's get rid of computer trouble.
For the
so
mayor
we didn't miss
to
anything.
return.
She would have left. I just got 15 minutes ago, probably.
I'll be on there.
It's one sentence. So, yep, I'll get it.
Oh. What happened to that?
I had to run down, grab something.
Oh.
You know, while he's talking, I'm gonna grab that. I'll
Yeah.
print that off for you.
Yeah, okay.
I'll just get you a copy so you can,
Oh,
you
thanks.
can talk about it.
Okay.
No waste paper.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hold you up at all. Apologies, should have let you know that. Okay.
You set?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Appreciate the chance to go over the FY '25 Finance Department budget presentation. Just want to start off by just pointing out how diverse the Finance Department is. In my own mind, I kind of think of it as an administrative services department because there's so much more than we do than finance. We have 13 different functional areas, although one of them I'll say we're not going to be touching on today, and that is tax. Tax, if you go through the org chart, and really as right now when push comes to shove, it does fall into finance. But since the combining of the clerk and tax positions a couple of years ago, Katie, of course, has been carrying that function and doing such a good job at it. Largely independent, although the buck still does stop with the finance department. We won't be touching on that. Won't probably cover all of these 13 areas, but the ones that we do cover, I'll apologize right now if it seems kind of disjointed as we jump from IT to welfare to benefits to grants to debt management. There's a lot of different areas that don't really integrate well with each other. So there we go. Before we start in on the budget, I just want to touch base on something that a follow-up of what we were talking about a year ago when I stood here. At that time, if you remember, the finance department had just come off a period where several long-term employees had either retired, moved on to other opportunities, and we were a very young department. We had moved from having 80-plus years of cumulative experience to having about 20 years of cumulative experience. And at that time, we put a heavy emphasis on training to kind of bring the new people up to speed. We focused on hiring the right people, and I'm glad to say we did do that. Within the last year, we've had one employee receive certification from an accounting certificate from the New Hampshire Government Finance Association. Another employee was certified through the Society for Human Resource Management, and another one is well on the way to getting certified through the National Institute of Public Procurement. So we've got a good, well-trained workforce. We're going to continue with that, but that's one of the successes over the past year. Jumping into the budget itself, starting on page 37 with the fiscal division budget. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's pretty much a hold-the-line budget from where we were last year. The changes in salaries that you see all throughout the city, of course, are also reflected here. But this is where you find the salaries for the entire department except for welfare, and the operating costs for the entire department except for IT and welfare, which are found elsewhere. And just a list of some of the functions that we perform within the fiscal division. I do want to touch base on one of the areas, and that is HR and recruitment, because it's such a, of course, a hot topic citywide and really across the area. HR does fall into finance. Just looking at a global view, we're sitting with a vacancy rate at the city of about 11, just over 11% right now. That has been pretty stable since winter. Of course, between department to department, it varies widely. We've had departments with as high as 33% vacancy rate, and some as low as 0. Of course, when you have like welfare, one-person department, of course, there you go. But within the last year, we've hired 21 full-time and 3 permanent part-time positions. That's not counting, of course, any of the seasonal positions or any of the temporary positions that we hire throughout the city. The enhancements that we've had through this year, and we're continuing through for recruitment, and this is things that we're doing in addition to what you would traditionally think about posting job notices either electronically or in the newspaper. Participation in career fairs at the Hewitt and at the Belknap Mall. I'll say there are individual departments who have been doing this for quite a while. What is different is putting HR out there, recruiting for the city as a whole at these fairs, and being proactive there, and also being more proactive in advertising through the community college system and through those kind of electronic bulletin boards. Something that's very exciting that is really just in the discussion stages, and I'll say it's so discussion that we have not even talked about this at Hewitt yet, but you know, it's just one of the ways in which we're trying to kind of move things along is perhaps the idea of developing a public works track within the Hewitt or some similar program to try to get people trained in the type of skill sets that we need to succeed in that area. So we don't know where that's gonna go, but it's just an example of what we're thinking of to try to recruit, help with the recruiting area. With retention, we'll put a very big effort into highlighting with the employees all the various benefit programs we have, wellness programs, retirement programs, investment opportunities, healthcare and along those lines, and we've made a very proactive move in that direction. Moving on to info technology on page 39. I also will be spending a lot of time on IT on this presentation. The operating budget itself is level funded through last year, as it was last year, but also included within the overall IT function is the tech bond that we've referred to several times over the last several months. $850,000 that's in the bond that will, the timing is such that it will not impact the budget in FY25. The first payment will be in FY26. We're going to be pursuing the bond within the winter, the fall to winter window. That tech bond will fund server replacement, upgrades to the camera systems, some of which are not even sold in this country because they're so old anymore. The new finance system we've talked about several times, cybersecurity enhancements, a new AV system for this room, and then miscellaneous equipment, switches and such to help protect some of the vulnerabilities within the city. Kind of a visual of what our IT network looks like. We serve 15 locations across the city. Every department, except for police, which has its own IT function, although of course there is a connection between the police and the city hall. As important as the function of as the locations are the connections between the locations. The wires are physically run from this building over to Parks, over to DPW, across the public internet to the airport and such, because it is those connections where a lot of the vulnerabilities exist. And those are some of where it's an ongoing everyday effort. And Councilor Susi had asked me before the meeting about if there's anything in here for cybersecurity. There are items in the budget for cybersecurity specifically, but frankly, everything we do in IT is for cybersecurity these days because it's that level of vulnerability. IT functions, I won't run through the whole list, but this is kind of what they do: tech support, administration, cybersecurity, backup, vendor management, user training, project management, managing the website, taking care of the phones, as they say in Laconia. If it plugs into the wall, it is IT. The network itself has about 600 different devices, 400 different software packages that run on those devices. They've served more than 1,200 tickets over the last year, all with 2 people. 2 people who cannot take vacation at the same time, 2 people who cannot be sick at the same time. I'm just kind of prepping you now that we have a great IT team, we have a great IT function, but we're getting toward the point, and you'll probably hear this more in FY26 and FY25, where we've grown beyond a 2-person shop. But for right now, it's working well, and our team is getting the job done. Switching gears once again to Treasury. I highlight this because it is one of the, I think, success areas within the city. It does not have its own page in the budget. The Treasury function is financed through the fiscal office on page 37. But one of the things that I'm going to take advantage of is a very favorable interest environment that's happening really throughout the region, throughout the nation right now, where the amount of money we can earn through our
Glenn,
general
you know
fund.
this graph, as far as I can see, has nothing on it, except numbers on the left and
I will say next time I will not put pale blue on brown, but you should have it within your handout.
We only have every other page. We only have the odd pages.
Oh, I apologize for that.
I don't know if on Katie's screen.
Yeah, it's just too light to show up on the screen.
Okay, sorry about that.
tell us what we would be reading
What
had
you
the,
would
had
be
the colors
reading,
come through.
what you would be reading is that general fund the interest earned on general fund deposits has gone from about $500,000 to where we're closing in on about $1 million this year. A lot of that is the fact that we just have the opportunity to do that because interest rates and the ability to earn interest is growing, but also the fact we have a finance staff and a treasurer who keeps a very close eye on making sure we maximize the earnings that we receive on that. So that is a major development within the department. One of the ways we're serving the city. I will say that this is one of the areas where hats off to Councilor Bogart. There is a legislation available that would severely limit the ability of the public, PDIP, the Public Deposit Investment Pool, to help us make our money work for us. And I know the councilor has worked very hard to make sure that does not get enacted, so that these kind of investments returns on investments can continue. But right now, that's a bright spot within the revenue generation of the city. In general fund non-tax revenues on page 46 of the budget book. There's a couple areas where there are major changes. Charges for services are up almost $500,000, of about $480,000 over what's in the current year budget. That is largely driven by increases in the public works, trash collection, solid waste areas of the city. And I will say that those revenue increases are to a large extent offset by expense increases as all those charges become more expensive. So that's a good number to look at, but keep in mind that there is an offset for that. Interest on general fund deposits, again, up by about $150,000. We just covered that. Parking revenue, down a little bit. Not that I'll say that revenue is necessarily down as much as our estimates for the current year. We're probably a little more optimistic than what they should have been last year. The revenue is still coming at a nice steady stream. And there we go. And then also on miscellaneous, you see quite a jump of about $485,000. That is netting out. That is largely due to the proposal that we liquidate a reserve fund that has frankly been sitting dormant since about 2010. The money's been out there just kind of sitting in a reserve for a project. It's called the Water / Revaluation Fund, and I think it's a kind of leftover long before my time, from a time when we did cyclic revaluations, which was a big cyclic impact on the budget. Of course, now that's not the way we do valuations anymore. We do a certain amount each year, and it's a very nice, steady impact on the budget. So the proposal is to take that revenue, that reserve fund, and move it in and start making that money work. Moving on to anticipated grants on page 5. Won't spend a lot of time here other than to say that we have 17 lease grants anticipated, totaling about $320,000, with a in-kind match of about $4,000. 2 public works grants of about $1.9 million, with an in-kind match of about $24,000. In-kind matches being provided through money that's already allocated and elsewhere in the budget. Give you just a heads up, when we propose the amendments to the budget later on this evening, you'll see that we're going to amend that we're going to ask that the total anticipated grants come down from $2.5 million to $2.2 million, 100% due to a correction in the formula that's used. If you add up the 327 and the 1.9, it does not equal $2.5 million. That was just an error in the formula that we're going to correct through the amendment. Total is about $2.2 million in anticipated grants in the budget. Moving on once again to general fund debt on page 43. The budget recognizes that we're retiring 2 bonds, actually this year, so they do not appear in the FY25 budget. The 2003 library renovation bond and the 2013 Smith Track Weirs Community Park bond. New in FY24 was the equipment and maintenance bond that you approved several months ago. Fire truck, ambulance, road program, sewer element to that. This hits the budget for, in full for the first time in FY '25, and that's part of this proposal. New in this budget is a technology bond we've referred to earlier, $850,000 to provide technology improvements across the city. And then the airport financing we discussed last week, $2.3 million grant anticipation note to fund improvements at the airports, going to the airport through the city. I will say we're still working on developing that proposal, and it's something that will come to fruition. Overall, the budget calls for a decrease in general fund debt of 2.14% over what's in the FY '24 budget. Mentioning just very briefly, employee benefits and insurance. There's not a lot of changes in this area. There's two things that really affect on the insurance side. The expenses, that is, of course, a rate increase of 7.18% through our insurer, New Hampshire Interlocal Trust, offset and mitigated somewhat by changes in employee census. So what we've been seeing is really a decrease in employees on the family plan, an increase in people on the less expensive individual and two-person plans. That is always guesswork as to what kind of people are going to want to come to work for the city in the last year, but we just make an estimate based on that, and that's what factors into those. I will say this page does not include any changes that might come from the retention efforts or the recruitment efforts that this council has made over the last several weeks. That is budgeted elsewhere in the budget along with salary increases, and so that will factor into here. On the insurance side, we have rate increases on workers' comp and liability insurances. Also, what we're seeing this year is we've had over the last several years been taking advantage of credits that have been built up at Primex that we've been spending down and now are spent down, so the credit is not there to be applied in FY '25. This reflects that. And then also just general increases related to just rate increases, particularly in the area of cyber security insurance. On the liability side, we're seeing that had a definite impact on the rates. Moving on to welfare. The area of this slide kind of talks about what the welfare is intended to do. It is one small part of the overall city effort to help those less fortunate within our community. The purpose of this slide is really to point out the fact that welfare does not exist in a vacuum. A lot of what we do in the welfare office is working with and helping people through our connections with other agencies, Lake Region Mental Health, Cary House, Belknap House, St. Vincent de Paul, just to name a few. The past year has seen the monthly welfare assistance costs skyrocket to an average of $11,000 a month. The prior high, going back 10 years, is about $6,000 a month. It's varied widely, but we just have not seen what we're seeing today, of course, in very many years. Where do we spend that money? This chart shows where that is, and kind of the takeaway from this is that between rent and shelter, we're spending about $126,000 of the $137,000 that we have spent this year, or about 91%. Difference between rent and shelter. Rent is what we pay so that people can stay where they are, which is a priority as far as helping people through an occasional rough time. And frankly, also in today's environment, a lot of times that is the most cost-effective way of keeping people housed. Shelter is finding somebody a different place to live, and for the most part, that is the traditional shelters, Cary House, Belknap House, with those areas being full. We're almost exclusively now looking at low-cost motels for those folks. So those are the two main components of finding shelter for people within Laconia. accounting for 91% of everything we spend in welfare. Kind of an interesting of the volume of welfare, and I'm kind of focusing on this because, of course, I know it's a large issue within our community. In FY '21, we had 200 contacts within the welfare office. So what I say by contacts, I mean people who physically walk in the office, sit down, and we work with them on assistance. Does not include people calling on the phone, and we give them phone referrals to other agencies or working with other communities, as we sometimes do to help folks. So we had FY '21, 200 contacts. We issued 73 vouchers, or about 37% of the time when somebody came in and sat down, it resulted in us writing a check to help them out. FY '24, year to date, the year's not over yet, 337 contacts with 232 vouchers, or 69% of the time, were resulting in us writing a check to help people out. And that is, a lot of that is related to the fact that these shelters are full, and that reaching out to everybody is taxed to the same extent that we are now, our partner agencies. And so we're having less of an opportunity to find assistance through our partners than we have in the past. 2019, interesting fact, the average housing/shelter voucher was $278. In 2024, the average cost of that is $600. Give you an idea of how much it's costing to meet this need within our community. Wrapping up on page 111 of the budget, which is the tax increment financing districts. Of course, we have 3 of those within the city: downtown, Lakeport, and Weirs. And the purpose of the district is, within the budget, is twofold. One is to provide sufficient funding to fund the projects that you have approved. And second is to maintain a modest balance within each of the funds to cover the cost of projects that just may come up during the course of the year. Right now, that is set at the goal is to have enough in each fund to fund the current year expenses, and about $100,000 left over to fund things that may come up during the year. That's the goal we are shooting to. The recommended increments this year: $250,000 for downtown, $25,000 for Lakeport, and $230 for Weirs, are intended to meet those goals. And that concludes the presentation, if there are any questions.
Counselor.
On the TIF districts, where does the money come from?
Sure.
That is allocated out to these different
Yep.
TIF districts?
The short answer is that it comes from taxes. So what the TIF district allows, when a community creates a TIF district, it creates an opportunity to take the incremental tax and devote it to the district. So, for example, let's say we create create a district, doesn't matter where, district today. The assessing department will go down and adjust the value of all of those properties within the new district. Let's just say that's $10 million. A year from now, they go and do the same thing, and now that property is worth $11 million. The taxes earned by that extra $1 million in new value, you have the ability to kind of siphon that off, or 50% of that, the way it's written in Laconia, siphon off 50% of that new tax revenue and put it in a special pot that's to be spent within the district.
So it comes from the property tax
It
itself?
does.
Okay.
But only for specific purposes. So the TIF districts are not meant to be a bank.
Right.
So in order to do that, this body has to define certain things it wants to do. We want to use some real examples, we want to fix the Main Street Bridge. We want to bury the utilities at the Weirs. And so we're allowed to take that money out in order to fund, in both cases, fund bond payments to fund those projects.
Okay.
And so, as you can see on page 111, in no case are we using all the funds that could be used within the TIF, because the projects just have not been approved to do that. And that can only be done by this council.
Thank you.
Counselor Susie, you raised his hand first, but go ahead.
I'm looking at the thing, you have like putting $250,000 into the downtown fund, is that what this means?
That is correct.
And then you're putting 25 into Lakeport and 230 into the Weirs?
That is correct.
Why is there such a disparity between,
Because the needs of each TIF district are different. Within the downtown TIF, in order to fund the projects that the council has approved, requires $360,000 this year. Lakeport, $25,000, and Weirs, $208,000.
how much, Louise?
$208,000. So what is in there for the Weirs is $108,000 for a bond payment, paying up burying the Lakeside Ave improvement bond. And then also $100,000 for the Weirs Dock project. Now, the interesting thing about the Weirs TIF, that the Weirs TIF for many years now has been in the negative.
Right.
So part of the recommendation of the increment of $230,000 is to fund what is needed, and also to try to build up that TIF so that it has that balance that I was referring to. And within the TIFs, the way it's been structured, at least recently, is to take the long-term view. So rather than have a huge increment this year to bring us all the way up to that goal in 1 year, we just kind of bring it in over the course of several years. So that's
Because I
what's
see
happening there.
the Weirs right now has 70,000 in its TIF, Lakeport has 79, and downtown's like $750,000. I was just reading down on the report this city manager
Right.
gave us today.
But remember also, the Weirs TIF has one more bond payment to make that's going to eat up that $79,000, and that's going to happen this month. So that
Okay.
by year end, it's going to be very slightly in the negative. And the downtown TIF does have a big balance in that. In this proposal, as you can see, there are $360,000 in expenses and only $250,000 in increment in the proposed budget.
Right, and the 360
So
includes
the idea is to gradually spend down that balance until it gets to about the $100,000 level, and then level it off at that
Okay,
point.
is the 360, how much of that is for the colonial bond, you might say?
$209,000.
The
So-
rest of it is for other things that might come up.
Well, the $100,000 for the 2015, I call it Main Street Bridge, but there's some other things. So we're still paying off that bond. $209,000 for the colonial bond, and then $51,000 for the condo fees, association fees for our portion of the Colonial Theater. So the Colonial Theater, of course, is a 3-unit condominium, if you think about it. The theater is one of those units, and we pay the condo fees for that. On the colonial bond payment, the way that was set up is that the TIF district pays the interest on the bond up to a maximum of $210,000. After that, it's paid by the general fund. What we're seeing this year, for first time as we proceed through the bond, the total interest payment is less than $210,000. So that's why you see it's 209, and then of course we'll steadily go down over the life of the bond.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to add on to that, there is some adjustments to the TIF later on in the budget, in the regular meeting when we talk about some of our adjustments for upcoming budget, because we identified some projects.
Glenn, the TIF, correct me if I'm wrong, also reflects the incremental increase in value of the property that lays within the TIF district, right? So if we look at
Absolutely.
Lakeport and we look at a reduced number, what appears to be it is a smaller number. The fact is, we have a 79E application to 51 Elm Street, which reduced the amount of money coming in that maybe a portion of that would have rolled into the TIF, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Lakeport, and I'll say this as a proud Lakeport resident, okay, it does not have the same tax base as the Weirs or as, so the overall base that you're operating off on that particular TIF is a lot smaller.
Right, so the downtown with all of the investment over the past decade, and then the Weirs with the increase, continued significant increase too, would feed that TIF account a little more robustly than Lakeport, which is, out of the three of them, has lagged behind just a bit, but certainly the potential and discussions would indicate that that may pick up in the coming
It's already
4 or 5
picked up.
years.
I'll
Yeah.
say this year, the increment is much, in a much better position than it was even 12 months ago. And I expect that that's going to continue as we see the development in Lakeport.
Can you ask me, answer this, the new development, I believe it's called Lookout, which sits above Lakeside Avenue, does that fall within the TIF? It's partially developed right now, townhouse-type units that sit up on the hill. Between Lakeside, behind the Veterans property.
Yeah.
Behind the, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that is definitely part of the TIF.
Yeah, okay, so I mean, that, we're looking at continued increases there in the valuations of the property
Oh,
that lay within that.
absolutely.
Really significant.
Absolutely. And of course, the Weirs by definition, there's a lot of lakefront, and we all know what's been happening with lakefront prices over the last several years, and so that's also feeding into it. But yes, there is considerable increment available within
Right.
the TIF because of those developments.
I'm wondering, and as sort of a follow-up to Counselor Susi as well, can the obligations of each TIF district, would you break something out for us and just get it out maybe through the city manager so we can all have it, see what's drawing down on our TIF funds in all 3 districts?
Certainly, certainly, that's kind of highlighted on page 111, but we can get you some more
Pull
details
it, if you
on
could
that.
just
Yep.
pull it out and we can circulate it, just so we have it at our
Exactly.
fingertip, if that's okay. Thank you. Counselor Cheney, you had a question.
I think my question's been answered.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 6B, the administration budget presentation. Thank you, Kirk. We've got 18 minutes.
88 minutes, all right, good, I think I can do this. It's not registering my...
I
was gonna say, this is, as you can see, our IT is,
Maybe we should move that bond up a little
I
bit
was
here,
gonna say,
huh?
if we're ready to get it,
I think it's the extra
where's
person.
yours? I can't get my thumb drive to.
No.
Different software programs. That's a problem.
Let's see if it's mine.
That's,
Every piece of software now has a monthly. Every piece of software now has a monthly fee, right?
and when I see, there's gotta be a clearinghouse somewhere, public entities to be able to.
There you go.
All right.
Something, because it's crazy. That's,
Is it up? Is it on there? I just couldn't get it to work, but we got it. All right. Good evening.
Oh,
Good evening.
16.
All right, so I'm just gonna hold my hand up here and I'll look over that direction and we should be good. So I have the privilege to present the administration side of the budget. So what's included in that is some of our capital outlay, our non-departmental special items, assessing, conservation, licensing, legal, the city clerk's office, those pieces of the budget that we see each year. Administration, page 8, which is all of you, myself, my office. Slight increase this year, and that's all related to just normal salary increases, no new initiatives. Our current capital outlay, you saw it within your budget book, it's on page 12 and 13. We're at right now at 2.7, but we do know that will be decreasing. We talked about this already as we worked through some other initiatives. It was intended that way. So you'll see that that number is going to be decreasing. I'm estimating when it's all said and done to be probably closer to the $2 million range. Capital outlay, Glenn described a little bit about the technology bond. That is in there. He talked about the airport, which I don't have in there. The other place that we have is some library improvements at Gale Memorial Library. We had originally had that in as capital. It was not going to, we weren't going to be able to fund enough of it in capital to be able to do what they needed. So we started breaking it down and nickel and diming on, well, do we do this now? Do we that now? We didn't think it was the right move. We're trying to move some money out of capital anyhow, so we have it in there as a improvement bond for them at the $360,000. They already have some other money put away. I think the total project is in the $385 range, but this will take care of the rest of what they need, plus that money that they already have. And when Director Hunter was here, you heard kind of her presentation about what they're looking to do over there. And one of the issues that we keep running into, I'll just reiterate what she said, is nothing is easy in that building because of its age and its construction type, and we weren't able to just call up contractors to come in and do the work. So they've been doing a nice job of moving that along, and so I thought this was a perfect place to be able to do this. Not a lot of our non-departmental, not a lot of changes in that. We did have some money under a homelessness response. That $40,000 is an arbitrary number because I don't have a number to know that, you know, X amount of dollars is going to do X amount of work, but we wanted to get some money in there, so we're able to do some work. A couple of years ago, this council put away some money, I think it was $20,000 at the time, for the police department to do some work with homelessness response. That money has been chipped away at, and it continues to come down. And it's again, it's not earmarked for anything specific other than around that term of homelessness. A lot of it is being able to get our police officers out into the public and do work within the public on homelessness, whether it be education, supporting our businesses, whatever it might be. That's what they've been doing. So I think when we take this money, tack it onto that, it's gonna help with what we're trying to do to a certain extent. We do have a little bit of an increase. Colonial Theater obligation, it's minimal this year. Last year was much higher. Small increase in our Lake Street and public access. And then when you look at that page 20 in your book and you see the contingency is obviously this huge number. That number is the increase in salaries that we talked about. Instead of putting it into the budget, that 1.18 million, instead of putting it into the budget, and putting each individual salary line within police and fire and public works and all that. Same way we did the longevity last year, we put it into mine under contingency. As everything gets passed, the budget gets passed, that money will get filtered into their individual budgets for normal accounting purposes. Special items increased by 12% this year, which only tallies to just over 36,000. We had 3 new requests that were supported: Lake Street Union Partnership Public Health, Community Wellness Center, and Laconia Historical Museum Society, each at $7,500. When people come to me and ask me, and I would pass this along to you to say the same, when we have nonprofits come to us and say, hey, what can you do to help? Please ask them to put together, we don't need this big package of information, but a nice page explaining who you are, or even better, have them come in and meet with me, because it's a great way to meet different people and hear what they're looking to do, as opposed to just getting a cold call letter in the mail saying, can you help us out? And we were able to do that this year. All of our special items support social services, health and community enrichment, or health, community enrichment, some environmental protection, and safety and support. Licensing, minimal change. Conservation Commission was level funded, and our legal was also level funded. Assessing, the increase was for salaries this year. We continue to contract outside with Whitney Consulting Group. They did have a change in their contract this year. We just reassigned their assessing contract with them for another contract year, or a couple years. Had a chance to work with them quite a bit and watch them work with our full-time city employees in the assessing office, and that office really does work very well together. Even though we have an outside agency that's only here a couple days a week, I've been very impressed with how well that they're able to work together, and you wouldn't notice that we have our full-time internal employees and external contractor. You wouldn't actually note that if you didn't know it. So I'm impressed by it. They did 2,200 properties as part of their cyclical inspections over their 5-year process. They assisted with building permits, and they did visited for sales inspections of over 500 properties as well. Our city clerk's office, excuse me. I'll do the elections first. It was a small increase of $800. There is a plan in place in the next sometime. We thought it was going to be this year. Now it looks like it's going to be at a minimum next year. New voting machines coming into the state. We are waiting on the state to approve what machines we can use and then give us the okay to go ahead and buy them. Our thought was that we were going to, originally they were in capital for this year, this coming fiscal year. We pulled it out. We thought we were going to be able to use them come this fall election, and that's not going to happen. We probably won't even be able to use them until into the FY26 year. So we moved along with them. Katie's been working with the state very closely, so we should know more soon, you would hope, but we'll see how that goes. Minor increase in the city clerk increase, and that's just for salaries. I just want to make a note, and I asked Katie if she wanted to do this, but I'll do it for her. Take a look. They did 33,000, almost 34,000 activities last year in their office. I'm happy to say at this point they are fully staffed, which has made a huge difference. But, you know, at 17 requests an hour of people coming in and looking for motor vehicle transactions, boats, vital records, all that list of stuff we do. And they sometimes that line gets pretty long, but they make it move really quickly. And I think they do a great job in there. And that doesn't include any of the phone calls that they receive. My office, Nancy, receives the phone calls and will transfer them. I would say probably more than 60% of them go down to the clerk's office because they're asking these types of questions. So great job out of that office, and give them props. Motorcycle Week, estimated revenue and expenses are there, $203,192. So if the year goes as expected, or as anticipated, we would move in about $11,000 into our general fund. But we don't know all those numbers until it all washes at the end anyhow. So that is everything I have for you. Councilor Cheney, I believe that was 11 minutes, so hopefully that's...
Proud of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions, councilors?
Yeah, Bruce has 5 minutes of questions.
He has 5 minutes of questions.
I would imagine all of us would have an experience in the clerk's office and tax collector's office. And I would agree with you, there's always activity there, but you never stand in line very long. It's always done professionally and efficiently. So thank you, Katie, to you and your team. It's a steady stream of work. There's really not a lot of downtime every time I walk by, which is often. So, thank you.
And she's almost always smiling.
Thanks. Any questions? Seeing none, Kirk, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will like to adjourn this portion of the city council, city budget presentations at 6:54 PM.